The governor's incompetent. You know, Gavin, I know Gavin very well. He's an incompetent guy with a good line of bullshit, and he doesn't get the job done.
Today, the governor of my state, Gavin Newsom, gave his State of the State address, in which he declared that California leads the nation. Now, the governor isn't wrong. As the residents of our state know all too well, California does lead the nation. California leads the nation in fraud. California leads the nation in unemployment. California leads the nation in homelessness. California leads the nation in poverty. California leads the nation in illiteracy. California leads the nation in gas prices. California leads the nation in electricity prices. California leads the nation in housing prices. California leads the nation in debt and deficits. And just this week we learned that for the 6th straight year, California leads the nation in outbound U-Haul rentals. The greatest state in the country has become the most popular state to leave. That, Mr. Speaker, is the true state of our state.
Friends, they honestly believed they could bury it deep. They figured if they stayed hushed and shuffled the documents, nobody would spot a thing. For years, a heavy quiet draped over the Golden State like a wet blanket. It was that tossing and turning kind of silence where you question if anybody hears the working man's plea. But believe me, the days of easy living are officially finished. It is January 12th, 2026, a sharp and chilly morning across America. The sun seems to possess a bit more glow today because the facts are finally breaking through. President Trump, our 45th and now 47th Commander-in-Chief, has returned to the Oval Office. He is done asking nicely. Now he is insisting on real answers. We are discussing a staggering $24 billion sum. That figure is so massive that regular folks like us can barely wrap our minds around it. That is your hard-earned cash, and it is mine too. It represents the paycheck of every truck driver, educator, nurse, and plant worker who punches in and pays their taxes with honor. Washington sent those funds to California's streets with a beautiful vow to assist the homeless, repair crumbling highways, and house the needy. Yet, what actually occurred? The capital evaporated into thin air like mist. While that mountain of money went AWOL, the encampments on the pavement only grew in number. The suffering intensified, and for ages it seemed like nobody gave a damn. It felt as if the people in power were mocking us, believing they could squander our fortune and never pay the price. However, just a few short days back, on January 6, 2026, the entire game flipped. President Trump's Department of Justice initiated a comprehensive criminal investigation. They are hunting down those missing billions. For the first time in ages, the residents of the governor's mansion in Sacramento are shaking in their boots. You can practically sense the shivers reaching us all the way from the coast. Governor Gavin Newsom is in a panic because he realizes the era of hidden agendas is concluded. It brings a lump to my throat, just contemplating the magnitude of it. Finally, someone is defending us, a leader who looks at that squandering and declares, "Not while I am in charge." This is not merely about currency, friends. This is about faith in the system. It is about a dad looking his boy in the eye and affirming that in America, nobody is above the law. The inquiry has begun, and the federal agents are closing in. To the average American who felt abandoned, it feels as though the cavalry has finally appeared. Justice is no longer just a vocabulary word. Justice has actually arrived. California Congressman Kevin Kiley is ringing the alarm bell in his home territory, stating that under Governor Gavin Newsom, the state has become the fraud capital of America. We have complete team coverage today. Our national reporter Alana Austin is on Capitol Hill tracking the Tim Walz inquiries, but we begin with correspondent Heather Myers, who has the details on the California situation. It is a rainy afternoon out there on the West Coast. Heather, what is the latest you can share with us? Good afternoon to both of you, Katrina and Andrew. This newest report was released by the state auditor, which is strictly a nonpartisan role. That state auditor has now placed 8 distinct state agencies on a high-risk watch list for issues like fraud, mismanagement, and waste. Here is a glimpse at that 92-page document. Recently added to this high-risk roster is California's food stamp initiative. If the state fails to rein in these improper payments, it could drain an additional $2.5 billion. Also appearing on the list is the Department of Finance, which was responsible for distributing COVID relief grants. Critics argue that a staggering $32 billion of that sum was snatched up by scammers. Then you have the infrastructure disasters like California's crumbling dams. There is also the high-speed rail project that has already burned through $18 billion of taxpayer funds without a single mile of track finished. Other investigations cite $24 billion supposedly spent on the homelessness crisis that critics claim the state completely lost track of. More recently, a report surfaced stating California mobile users paid a surcharge for years to update the state's 911 network. Here is Congressman Kevin Kiley discussing the fate of that initiative. After blowing $650 million on that system, the state is tossing it out and starting from scratch. They completely squandered the cash because the technology simply does not function. Bear in mind, we are right next door to Silicon Valley and Sacramento. Yet, the government cannot figure out how to make fundamental technology operate. Now, friends, allow me to take you a bit deeper into why this headline hits us so hard. It is not merely about dollar signs printed on a ledger. It is about the human beings who were left in the dust. I want you to visualize my old buddy, Tom. Tom is a veteran, a man who donned the uniform of this magnificent nation with dignity. He stood watch so that the rest of us could slumber peacefully. However, when Tom returned home, life threw some heavy punches his way. A few tough breaks, a bit of misfortune, and suddenly the country he defended seemed to have amnesia. For a stretch, Tom did not even have a roof over his head. When the state of California proclaimed that massive $24 billion initiative a few years back, Tom felt a flicker of optimism. He thought, finally, assistance is on the way. He pictured secure shelters, programs to help vets get back on their feet, and perhaps a small apartment to call his own. But that assistance never materialized. The cash flowed like a mighty river, yet it never reached the parched, cracked ground where Tom and so many others stood. Instead of warm beds, he witnessed more tents popping up. Instead of extended hands, he encountered bureaucracy and slammed doors. The light in his eyes began to dim. But let me share what occurred when I chatted with Tom just yesterday after the news of President Trump's investigation broke. The spark had returned. He looked at me with moisture in his eyes, not tears of sorrow, but tears of relief. He said, "Friend, for the first time in years, I feel like someone actually sees us." President Trump is not afraid to battle for the little guy. He is asking the tough questions nobody else would possess the courage to ask. Tom understands that this inquiry signifies accountability. It means the people who pocketed those funds will have to explain why our heroes are still shivering in the cold. It is that sensation of being recognized that shifts the whole dynamic. It is similar to when a father steps in to defend his kin. You feel secure. You feel valued. That is precisely what President Trump is doing right now. He is stepping up and declaring that every American life counts. He is saying that every veteran deserves respect and that no politician is too mighty to answer to the citizenry. This investigation acts as a beacon of light for Tom and for thousands like him who simply want a fair shot at the American dream. The hope is genuine, my friends, and it is spreading rapidly. By the way, nor was that little train in California going from San Francisco to Los Angeles. That is being managed by Gavin Newsom, the governor of California. Did you ever hear of Gavin Newsom? He has presided over a train that is the worst cost overrun I have ever witnessed. It is totally out of control. So then they said, all right, we will not go into San Francisco. We will stop 25 miles short, and we will not go into Los Angeles. We will stop 25 miles short. It is hundreds of billions of dollars for this foolish project that should never have been constructed. Then they realized that it would have been far less expensive if we just provided limousine service back and forth and made it free. They would have saved hundreds of billions of dollars. They have airplanes that fly there for 1/100th of the cost. They also have cars and a thing called the highway that runs back and forth, which is not fully utilized. Yet they got involved with this project. You know, I always liked Gavin. I had a decent relationship with him. I just got him a lot of water. I sent people in to open up that water because he refused to do it. We just got him a massive amount of water. If they would have had that water and done what I instructed, they would not have had the fires in Los Angeles. Those infernos would have been extinguished very quickly. But if you think about it, you have to take a look at this project. It is the worst cost overrun I have ever seen. I have watched a lot of stupid people build a lot of stupid things, but that is the absolute worst financial disaster I have ever seen. Look at what is happening between San Francisco and Los Angeles. You want to ask about that because this government is not going to pay. I told our very great new Secretary of Transportation, Sean Duffy, who is doing a fine job, that we are not going to foot the bill for that thing. They are just totally out of control. This is something where you simply do not have situations like this. It is not even conceivable. Something like 30 times over budget. 30 times the cost is the craziest thing. Now it is costing hundreds of billions. It was supposed to be a simple train, and I think the media should take a hard look at it. I would love for him to run for president on the other side. You know I would love to see that. But I do not think he is going to be running because that one project alone, along with the fires and many other things, pretty much put him out of the race. You know, folks, when we discuss massive figures like $24 billion, it can be difficult to wrap our heads around it. It just sounds like a whole lot of zeros on a page. But for Sarah, a single mother living right in the heart of Los Angeles, that money was not just a number. It was supposed to be a shield. It was intended to keep her neighborhood safe and clean, so her two little ones could play outside without worry. Sarah works 2 jobs. She is up before the sun making breakfast, getting the kids to school, and then heading to work. She is tired, my friends, bone tired. But she does it because she loves her family. For years, she watched as tents popped up near her children's school. She watched as the streets she grew up on became places she was terrified to walk down at night. She heard the politicians in Sacramento promise that things would get better and that the funds were there to fix it. But nothing changed. In fact, it only got harder. She felt like her voice did not matter, like she was shouting into a storm and no one could hear her. But then came that announcement from President Trump. Sarah told me she was on her lunch break, just checking her phone, when she saw the news about the Department of Justice investigation. She said she had to sit down because her knees suddenly felt weak. She read that the president was sending in the best investigators to find out where every single penny went. "Friend," she told me, I started to cry right there in the break room. For the first time in so long, she felt like someone was fighting for her. She felt like the President of the United States looked at her neighborhood, saw their struggle, and said, "Enough is enough." It was not just about catching the bad guys for Sarah. It was about the future of her children. She realized that President Trump was not just looking at a ledger. He was looking out for the safety of American families. He was making sure that the money meant to help people actually helped them instead of vanishing into thin air. That night, Sarah hugged her kids a little tighter and slept a little better, knowing that justice was on the march. She knew that with Trump in charge, the forgotten men and women, and the hard-working moms like her, were forgotten no more. Folks, I want you to close your eyes and imagine the deep rumble of a big diesel engine. That sound is the heartbeat of America. It belongs to men like Mike, a truck driver from the Central Valley who spends more time on the asphalt than he does in his own living room. Mike is the kind of guy who misses birthday parties and football games because he is out there hauling the goods. He is the one who keeps our stores stocked and our families fed. Every Friday, Mike looks at his paycheck and sees how much he earned with his sweat and long hours. Then he sees how much is taken out for taxes. And it hurts, friends. It really does. But Mike is a patriot. He has always believed that paying his share to build schools and roads is part of being an American. However, for the last few years driving through California, he has seen something that breaks his heart. He drives past miles of tents and piles of trash on the side of the highways. He realizes that the huge chunk of money taken from his check, part of that $24 billion, was supposed to fix this. Instead, he watched the problem grow, and he felt like he was being robbed. He felt like his sacrifice meant nothing to the people in charge. But let me tell you about a moment that happened just a few days ago. Mike was driving down Interstate 5, tired and missing his wife, when President Trump's voice came over the radio. He heard about the Department of Justice probe. He heard that the president was sending in federal prosecutors to track down every single dime of that wasted money. Mike told me he actually had to pull his rig over to the shoulder. He turned off the engine and just sat there in the quiet of the cab. Tears started streaming down his face. These were tears from a grown man who thought no one cared about his hard work. He said, "Friend, for years I felt like a fool for playing by the rules while they wasted our money. But hearing Trump go after them, it made me feel proud again. It made me feel like my hard work matters." That is the power of what is happening right now. It is restoring the dignity of the American worker. President Trump is sending a message to Mike and millions like him. I respect what you give to this country, and I will not let anyone squander it. For Mike sitting in that truck cab, the road ahead suddenly looked a lot clearer and a lot brighter. Yeah, so this determination came from the nonpartisan state auditor who essentially christened California the fraud capital of the United States. The number of agencies classified as high risk, meaning there is rampant fraud, abuse, and mismanagement, has doubled during Gavin Newsom's tenure from 4 agencies to 8. So we are talking about all kinds of fraud when it comes to Medicaid, SNAP benefits, and unemployment insurance. And all of this, by the way, comes on top of the incredible fraud, waste, and mismanagement that we already knew about. There is the high-speed train where there has been no track laid in 17 years, despite spending $18 billion, plus the $32 billion minimum in unemployment insurance fraud during COVID, and the $650 million on a canceled next-generation 911 system. California is absolutely, under this governor, the fraud capital of the United States. And this is exactly the model that Governor Newsom wants to take to the rest of the country. Well, you certainly got the governor's attention because he responded to you. He stated, "Kylie is wrong. The auditor's high-risk list does not allege wrongdoing or billions in currency lost. It is a management tool used to target complex programs for heightened oversight and corrective action. Representative Kiley's claims are flat-out false and misrepresent both the state auditor's report and the facts. Quickly, what is your reaction to this? I would invite anyone to read the audit, and by the way, there have been other audits, like the one that found $24 billion was spent on homelessness and they lost track of the money. You can look at the bottom line there in the state of California. They are billions of dollars in debt. Congressman Kiley, thank you so much for joining us tonight on Friends. If there is one thing that holds this great nation together, it is the family. It is the mom and dad working late to put food on the table and the kids dreaming of what they will be when they grow up. But for a young family like the Johnsons living up in Sacramento, that dream was starting to feel like it was slipping away. They are good people. Mr. Johnson works in construction building homes for others, while Mrs. Johnson takes care of their two little ones. They had big dreams of owning their own small house, a place with a yard where the kids could run and play. When that $24 billion was first announced years ago, the Johnsons were hopeful. They were told that a big part of that money was for affordable housing, so they thought, finally, we will have a chance. They waited, and they saved every penny they could, but year after year passed. Instead of new affordable homes being built, they saw costs go up. They saw their taxes rise, and they saw the homeless crisis in their own city get worse right on their doorstep. They were still squeezed into a tiny apartment, wondering if they had done something wrong. They felt like the system was broken, like the game was rigged against regular folks just trying to get by. But let me tell you about the scene in the Johnson household just a couple of nights ago. The kids were asleep, and Mr. and Mrs. Johnson were sitting at the kitchen table looking at bills, feeling that heavy weight on their shoulders. Then the news came on. They heard about President Trump's Department of Justice coming to Sacramento. They heard that the president was demanding to know why that housing money never turned into actual houses. Mr. Johnson looked at his wife, and for the first time in a long time, he smiled a real, genuine smile. He slammed his hand on the table, not in anger, but in pure joy. He said, "Honey, do you hear that? Trump is our champion. He knows what happened, and he is coming to fix it." Tears welled up in Mrs. Johnson's eyes as she realized that they were not alone anymore. The most powerful man in the world was fighting for their dream. He was fighting to make sure that the money meant for families actually reached families. That night, the Johnsons didn't just sleep. They dreamed again. They knew that with accountability coming, the American dream was back within reach. You know, friends, for the longest time there was a heavy fog over our communities. Good, honest people would ask simple questions like, "Where is the money going?" and "Why aren't things getting better?" But instead of answers, they got complicated excuses. They were told it was too hard to explain, and they were told to just trust the system. It made folks feel small, like they didn't understand the world anymore. But this week, with President Trump's investigation moving full steam ahead, that fog is lifting, and the light of truth is finally breaking through. Just yesterday, I was down at the local hardware store, and the mood was different. Usually people just buy their nails and leave, heads down, but yesterday, everyone was talking. I saw old friends shaking hands and strangers nodding at each other. There was a buzz in the air, a feeling of excitement that I haven't felt in years. I spoke with the owner, a kind woman named Mrs. Higgins, who has run that store for 40 years. She told me that for the last 5 years, she has had to clean up trash from her storefront every single morning. She watched her customers struggle and her neighborhood fade. She felt like no one in the high offices of government cared about a little hardware store owner. But when she heard about the subpoenas, which is a big word for legal orders demanding the truth, she said she felt a weight lift off her shoulders. "Friend," she said to me while wiping her hands on her apron, "President Trump is doing what a good boss does. He is checking the receipts. He is showing us that we were not crazy for asking questions. He is showing us that truth still matters. That is the beauty of this moment. It isn't just about catching mistakes. It is about validating the common sense of the American people. We knew something was wrong, and now we have a leader who is brave enough to prove it. The secrets are coming out into the open sunlight, and let me tell you, it is a beautiful sight to see. The fear is gone, replaced by a steady, burning hope that finally things are going to be made right. Folks, let me tell you, good news travels faster than a prairie fire in the wind. What started as a report from the Department of Justice has turned into a celebration all across this great land. Just this morning, I walked into the local diner, the one where the coffee is always hot and the pie is always fresh. The feeling in the room was electric. Usually folks are quiet, reading their papers or looking at their phones with a frown. But today was different. People were talking, laughing, and sharing stories. I saw Old Bill, a retired mechanic with grease permanently stained on his hands, holding up his phone for everyone to see. He was showing a picture, a funny little image folks call a meme, of President Trump wearing a shiny silver sheriff's badge and a cowboy hat riding in to clean up the Wild West. It made us all chuckle, but deep down it made us feel something powerful. Safety. It felt like the sheriff was finally back in town and the bad guys were on the run. But then the room got quiet as a young man named Daniel stood up. I have known Daniel since he was a boy. He is quiet and works hard at the grocery store. He had tears streaming down his face as he spoke. "Mr. Friend," he said, "my brother has been on the streets in San Francisco for 2 years. We tried to get him into those programs they promised, but they always said there was no room even with all that money, and I thought we lost him." He wiped his eyes and looked around the diner, but seeing President Trump demand answers and hearing that he is fighting to find out where that money went gives me hope that maybe, just maybe, the help will finally reach my brother. There was not a dry eye in that diner, my friends. We all got up and patted Daniel on the back in a moment of pure, beautiful connection. We realize that this investigation isn't just about politics or budgets. It is about saving lives. It is about brothers, sisters, and friends who were left out in the cold while the money vanished. Supporters are organizing watch parties tonight, not to watch a game, but to watch history being made. From coast to coast, families are gathering, holding hands, and praying for the truth. We are united again, bound together by the belief that with a strong leader, justice will always prevail. Folks, I have lived a long life, and I have learned that courage is contagious. When one brave person stands up and speaks the truth, it gives everyone else the strength to do the same. That is exactly what is happening right now on this beautiful Monday, January 12th. President Trump's bold move to investigate that missing $24 billion did not just shake up the politicians in Sacramento, it woke up the American spirit in all of us. Let me share a little story that brought me to my knees today. I was walking past the old community park down the street, the one that had gotten a bit run down over the years. Usually it is empty, but today I saw a group of young people, teenagers and folks in their 20s, out there with trash bags and rakes, cleaning up. I stopped and asked a young man named Jake what was going on. He wiped the sweat from his forehead and smiled. He said, "Mr. Friend, we saw what President Trump is doing. He is cleaning up the mess at the top. So we figured we should clean up the mess right here at the bottom to make our neighborhood ready for the comeback." I tell you, friends, I had to turn away for a moment because the tears just started flowing. That is what leadership does. It inspires and makes us want to be better. These kids are not waiting for a handout anymore. They are taking pride in their home because they see a president who takes pride in his country. They know that if the president is fighting for them, they have a reason to fight for themselves. And the news from the investigation keeps getting better. We are hearing reports that the Department of Justice has found the paper trail. They are not just looking at the surface anymore. They are digging into the deep files. They are tracing where the money went, bank account by bank account. The secrets that were hidden in the dark are being pulled into the light, and there is nowhere left for the dishonesty to hide. The excitement is building, folks, and you can feel it in the air. We are on the edge of a great victory, not just for the budget, but for the soul of our nation. My friends, I want to tell you about a young father named David. David is a good man, a carpenter who works with his hands to build strong frames for houses. But for the last year, David has been living with a heavy heart. He looked around his town in California, saw the mess and the sadness on the streets, and he felt like there was no future there for his little girl, Lily. Just last week, David and his wife made a hard choice. They bought suitcases and started packing their clothes and wrapping up their dishes, getting ready to leave the state they called home. They felt like they had no choice, and that the people in charge didn't care about families like theirs. They were going to move away, leaving behind their friends and the grandma who lived down the street, just to find a place that felt fairer. But then this news broke, and David heard President Trump's voice cutting through the noise clear as a bell. He heard about the $24 billion being tracked down. He heard that the free ride for the politicians was over, and that the law was coming back to town. David told me that yesterday afternoon he walked into the living room where those suitcases were sitting by the door. He looked at his wife, and he saw a new look in her eyes, a look of strength. He walked over, zipped open the biggest suitcase, and started taking the clothes out. He said, "Honey, we aren't running away. The sheriff is cleaning up the town, and if President Trump is fighting for us, then we are going to stay right here and fight for a home." They unpacked those bags, folks, and they put their pictures back on the wall. That is what this investigation is doing. It is giving people the courage to stay, to build, and to believe that their home can be great again. It is stopping the exodus and starting a revival. David's little girl is going to grow up near her grandma after all, and that beautiful family is staying put because they know that in America, when we see a problem, we don't run from it, we fix it, especially when we have a leader who leads the way. The tide has turned, my friends, and the foundation is strong once more. Well, folks, here we are at the end of our time on the porch today, but it feels like the beginning of something much bigger. As the sun sets on this January day, I want you to take a deep breath. Can you feel it? The air feels cleaner, and the heavy weight that has been sitting on our chests for so long is finally lifting. So we aren't just hoping for better days anymore, we are living in them. This investigation into the missing $24 billion in California is more than just a news story. It is a signal fire lighting up the night. It tells every single American, from the fishermen in Maine to the ranchers in Texas, to the families right here in our neighborhoods, that you matter, your hard work matters, your dreams matter, and most importantly, your trust matters. President Trump has shown us that he isn't just a leader who sits in a fancy office. He is a fighter who stands in the ring for us. Think about Sarah and Tom and the Johnson family. Tonight, they are going to sleep with a peace they haven't known in years. They know that the missing billions aren't just lost numbers anymore. They are the key to unlocking a future where government serves the people, not the other way around. The free ride for those who wasted our money is over. The train of American greatness is back on the tracks. So, my friends, keep your heads held high and look at our beautiful flag waving in the breeze, knowing that it stands for justice again. We have a long road ahead to fix everything, but we are walking it together, and we are walking it with a leader who has our backs. The dark days of wondering, where did it go, are behind us, and the bright morning of look what we can build is here. This is our country, our home, and our moment, so let's cherish it. God bless you all. God bless President Trump, and may God forever bless the United States of America. This is your friend signing off. If this tale warmed your heart and gave you hope for our great country, please welcome yourself into our growing family here at my channel. Tap that subscribe button so you never miss a story from the porch. Click the thumbs up if you believe justice is finally here, and leave a comment below telling me the first thing you would fix in your town if you knew the president had your back. I read every single one, and I'd love to hear your voice. Until next time, keep the faith.